Hello, I'm Dr. Ron Charles. Thank you for tuning in today. The life of Jesus is probably one of the most fascinating, if not the most fascinating, biography that the world has ever known. John tells us in the book of John, the very last verse, that if all of the events of Jesus' life were recorded, then all the books in the entire world would not be able to contain it. Well, they had more books then than what we have today. So we're talking about a lot of information, for mountains of information that could have been written that somehow we don't have today. Now, in our Gospels today, we have access, because it's recorded in our Bible, our Gospels, 119 different events of Jesus' life. Now, in those 119 different events, it includes his birth, his ministry, his death and resurrection and ascension, includes his miracles of healing, his miracles to controlling nature and the elements. It also includes his parables and his various teachings to his disciples as well as to the multitudes. And so everything that we know about Jesus, we have in 119 different events. What happened to the other thousands of events? We don't know. Many of them were destroyed by the Romans. We know that. Many of them were destroyed by deceived Christian leaders through the years. And some of them were destroyed by the religious wars of the Protestants against the Catholics. And if one felt the other was authentic, then they would destroy it. And things like that. And so right now, God has seen fit for us to be preserved for us today, 119 events. Now, in my opinion, and this is strictly my opinion, that those 119 events were preserved for us. God the Father kept his hand of protection upon those events because those are the ones that we absolutely had to have to live in the 21st century as we are today. And so out of all the things that are in there, each and every one of them are relevant to our life today and how we should spend that life in our dedication to Christ today. Now, this means that, Jesus' sacrifice, his crucifixion, his death for us, and his resurrection, that is head and shoulders above everything. That is the greatest of all of history. But outside of that, this means that all the other events that are recorded, 119 events, every one of them is of equal value. There's no such thing as a minor event and a major event in the life of Jesus. Many pastors have their own pet sermons that they like to preach, and they feel like that this is a very important sermon. Others, they never preach. As an example, I'm sure all of you can probably count dozens, if not multiply dozens of times you have heard sermons on the Sermon on the Mount. You've heard sermons on Jesus breaking of the bread and the fish and feeding the multitudes, Jesus walking on the water. Many, many times about that. But how many sermons have we ever heard on the healing of Peter's mother-in-law? We know it happened, but it's just something that you don't really hear a lot of sermons on. What about the time that Pilate mixed the blood of the sacrifice with the Galileans when he slaughtered them during a time of sacrifice in the religious synagogue up there? You don't hear any sermons on that, very seldom. But it's there. It's one of the 119. And because it is one of the 119, then it is absolutely important and mandatory for us to be involved in our lives. Continuing with what we have seen in Luke and continuing with Jesus' journey, the last couple of months of his life before his crucifixion, he raised Lazarus from the dead, and then he made his journey up into Galilee. Not much is known about that trip up there. And once he got to Galilee, he turned around and came back down into Jerusalem. He went through the leper cities, he went through Jericho, and then made his way to Jerusalem. And so we only have a few things that are recorded about that time, but yet they're part of this 119. So they are absolutely mandatory for us in our 21st century. And this is why this is not an event that's minor or something that's kind of a stepping stone to get to someplace else. So why don't we look at Luke, the 17th chapter, and we're not going to leave where we left. We're not going to begin where we left off the previous time, but we will look at verse number 26 of chapter 17. It says this: "And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the Son of Man." This means the return of Jesus. "They did eat, they drink, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise also, as it was in the days of Lot, they did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all." Now let's look at verse number 32. Remember Lot's wife. Why is Jesus bringing up a subject that is recorded in Genesis 19? I mean, this happened 3,000 years ago or more from the time that Jesus was living until that time that Lot had this difficulty in Sodom. And Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities of the plain were destroyed. Why is Jesus bringing this up? Now, nowadays, we have a lot of ministers who specialize in eschatology or specialize in end-time prophecy. We have websites on the internet that they only talk about one thing: the end times, end-time prophecy. How to know what time it is and what the seasons hold for the return of Jesus. As a matter of fact, some of these sites and some of these ministers, they give more attention to Antichrist and the coming of Antichrist rather than Christ himself, and how to identify this Antichrist and all of this. But notice what Jesus said: "As it was in the days of Noah, as it was in the days of Lot. They married, are given in marriage, they built, they sowed, they bought groceries, they bought cars, they did mechanic work, they lived their daily lives, and in our terminology today, they sat down in front of the TV, propped their feet up, watched a movie, they ate their dinners, they took their kids to school, everything just exactly like it looks like in everyday life. And then in the midst of this everyday life, then the destruction came." I don't discredit the end time sermons. I don't try uh, to put them down because I don't know enough about it. Okay, I'm an archaeologist, and I know about digging in the ground, digging dirt, and trying to look for a civilization that is 2,000 years old. I have no problems doing that, but I don't know hardly anything about end time prophecy. People ask us because they know that we work in Egypt, they know that we work in Israel, they know that we work in Sinai, that we should be experts on Bible prophecy. No, I'm not. Okay, I do know about digging holes. I do know about finding ancient civilizations, but I'm not an expert in Bible prophecy. But what Jesus tells us here is that you're really not going to see some type of great thing happen, and then you know that the coming of the Lord is right upon us. Because they were doing their daily lives, their daily things that they always did, and then the end came, and they were taken and destroyed even in the midst of their daily lives. Now, I do know that those who would listen could have been warned. I don't know if Noah was a preacher who tried to convince people to come into the ark, or whether God had already pre-established the fact that there were only going to be 8 people that were saved. I don't know. Some people feel like that Noah did preach, and he did try to get people to come in, which he very well could have done. But they didn't yield to him. They didn't yield to him at all. Lot, we don't know the situation with Lot. We know that the people were doing their daily lives the very day that the sulfur and the fire rained from heaven. The very day it happened. They were living their lives up until that time. Noah very well, or Lot very well, could have preached to them, told them that the end is coming. If you don't change your ways, we got to get out of here. But there again, maybe he didn't. We don't know. But we do know that Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities of the plain were indeed destroyed. But then there's this statement that Jesus says to his disciples, which is very puzzling. Remember Lot's wife. Well, Lot had 2 wives. Lot was married when he went down with Abraham into Egypt. They stayed there for a number of years, and he married a girl by the name of Samisa. She was an Egyptian, and she was a convert into the Jewish religion, and became part of the household of Lot, and she was adopted into the family of Lot, and then not long after that, he married her officially. So she became his first wife, and they seemed to be happy together. There didn't seem to be any difficulties, but we also know that she died in childbirth. She had 1 child successfully. The next child that was born, that was unsuccessful, and she died during that time. Now, after Lot joined Abraham and went back into Canaan, then we know that both of them had gotten very, very wealthy in Egypt. Wealthy with cattle and sheep and goats and servants and wealth that they couldn't even live together in the same place. Abraham says, Lot, whatever you want, take, and I'll go the opposite direction. Well, Lot chose the beautiful Jordan River Valley, which now is occupied by the Dead Sea and the area that's probably some of the least advantageous real estate in the entire world. It's worthless. But at the time that Lot chose it, it was very valuable. It's cultivatable, had beautiful rivers and forests and streams and cultivated land. And so Lot took possession of that area in the direction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And so when Lot was not content to living outside of the city of Sodom, and so eventually he moved into the city of Sodom, and there he married his second wife. And his second wife was Laodiceah, and she was a Sodomite. She was not a believer in the God of Lot, and so they had 4 daughters. We know that from Egyptian history, that she had 4 daughters, and 2 of those daughters refused to leave the city, and 2 of them did go with Lot out of the city of Sodom whenever destruction began. And so Lot had made it very clear. The angels had made it very clear to Lot, and he made it very clear to his wife. And the angels of the Lord who were there to warn them of what was coming and what was going to happen, they were very clear. They said, get out of this place. Do not live here. Do not stay here. Take your loved ones and get out of here, because it will be destroyed this day. There'll be nothing left of this place. Get out of here. Well, the custom of the Planzines, as they call them at that time, which were the occupants of that particular area before it was destroyed, they had a very strong husband and wife relationship. And it was strong for the husband, not necessarily for the wife. The wife became not a partner with her husband, but she became real estate that was owned by the husband. And so she was basically nothing more than a slave, except she did have the right to be the legitimate mother of any children that were born, even born to slaves. And so she was the wife of Lot there in Sodom. It never says that she was converted to the Jewish religion. It never says that she became a believer in the God of Lot, or that she became a believer in the ways of the Jews as they had in Egypt and as they came back. But Lot had made it very specific to her. And this was something that was their culture demanded. If the husband said it, then it was not to be questioned. It was not to be argued with, and it had to be followed right down to the very letter. Lot had said, get out of this place and do not look back. 2 of the daughters and the wife of Sodom went with Lot out of the city. The 2 other daughters that he had with this wife did not leave the city. We also know that he had 5 sons with this wife, and Egyptian history says that they also did not leave the city. And so the only real control, it seems, that Lot had was basically to his wife concerning this situation. So as they waited until the very last minute, finally the angels of the Lord had to take them, said, get out of this place, because God is going to destroy this place, and he can't do it until you get out of here. And so they took them by the hand and led them out into an area that was safe out of the city of Sodom. And Lot told his wife, not only can't you go back, but don't even look back. But when you look at that word look, it doesn't mean just glance back over your shoulder to what is happening. What look means is to stop in your progression and turn around and begin to walk as fast or travel as fast in the opposite direction as you were to begin with. And so what happened is that this wife from Sodom, only thing she knew was Sodom. It seems like that Lot's influence and his godly influence did not spill over into his family for one reason or the other. We don't know why. We can make a lot of excuses. We can say a lot of things. But we do know that she did leave with Lot, but as the destruction began to rain down from heaven, whether it was a volcanic eruption or whatever it was, and came back down on the city of Sodom, and it began to burn, she stopped in her progression, turned around, and walked back with the same type of intensity that she was walking previously back into the city of Sodom. And as she did, then she was destroyed. The Bible says, King James Version, she was turned into a pillar of salt. Some of the other versions say that she became engulfed by the sulfur that fell from heaven. Today, you can find about 100 tourist spots out there that say that this is Lot's wife. Some of them even have plaques on them, and you can find at least 6 or 7 of them around the southern shore of the Sea of the Dead Sea, present day Dead Sea, but probably none of them are the correct ones. And so anyway, Jesus said to these disciples, remember Lot's wife. Why did he tell his disciples this? These disciples are the one who's followed him, who listened to him, who he taught, who he intimately taught some of the things he never taught anyone else. Why was it necessary for Jesus to tell them? Because Jesus knew that the day was coming when he would be gone. He would be taken. He would be killed. He would go into the tomb, but he would rise. But then after the resurrection, then he would leave permanently and not come back until the appointed time, many hundreds or a couple of thousand years later. And so what happens once he's gone? Jesus told them, he warned them, look at Lot's wife and remember Lot's wife. Don't look at the fact that she was from Sodom. Don't look at the fact that she married the nephew of Abraham himself. Don't look at the fact that she was taught by her husband. Don't look at the fact that the angels of the Lord themselves came down personally to show them what to do and to how to do it. Remember Lot's wife. She knew what was right. She knew what was expected of her, but she chose to stop in that progression and turn around and go back the other way. Jesus knew that these disciples would have decisions to make. What happens once he is gone? Would they return to their way of life? Would they return to their profession? Would they go back home to their families? What would they do? And Jesus very specifically, sternly, and to the point warned them, remember Lot's wife. She was going the right direction, but she chose instead, because of familiarity, because of lost love, because of a lost relationship perhaps with people in the city, as well as her own family, who didn't come with them. She chose to go back purposely, premeditatively, and planned. She went back. And in so doing, she was destroyed. Jesus is telling these disciples, you're going to have a choice. And when you have that choice, you need to make the right choice. You need to choose to continue to follow me. Continue to follow what you know is right, and you will be okay if you do that. The Lord bless you.
Welcome to Canaan, a small indigenous community here on the west coast of Colombia. In recent years, Canaan has grown tremendously. The people here have a heart for God and for sharing His love. This is where the Cubit Foundation does their work. Over the years, Cubit has worked on developing the community in many ways, and by doing so, they've developed personal relationships and bonds that will last a lifetime.
Cuando viene cualquier persona del extranjero, pues lo recibimos con mucho amor, recibimos con mucho aprecio, con mucho afecto, porque sabiendo que si esta persona vive tan lejos, no nos conoce y nos viene a visitar, eso para nosotros es muy satisfactorio y toca mi corazón de una manera especial.
Brad Charles is one of the leaders behind Cubit and their work in Canaan, Colombia. His passion is for helping people in need around the world and doing God's work out here on the mission field. The Cubit Foundation has done some incredible work here thus far, and God's presence is truly evident. Partnerships with local Colombian churches, Cubit has taken part in service to the village of Canaan. And with your help, Cubit will continue to serve them and many more around the world.
When people give to Cubit, I want them to go. I want them to go with me. And I want them to experience this.
Lo imposible para el hombre es posible para Dios.
To find out more and to become a part of what Cubit is doing here in Colombia, log on to cubitfoundation.org. That's cubitfoundation.org.